Hi community of awesome, I'm Ava J and this is Bookish Pixie. So you've come up with a book idea you'd like to pursue and you've brainstormed some ideas and you're coming up with characters and now you need to name them. Naming your characters can sometimes feel like a monumental task where you're not really sure where to start. So you guessed it, today's vlog is about how to name your characters. The number one most popular resource for writers trying to figure out names for their characters is baby names websites. I suspect that at least a good 25% of people who go to baby names websites regularly are not parents or would-be parents, but writers. But that's not scientific, I'm just saying. Anyway, writers use baby names websites. Baby names websites are really helpful not just because they have a huge list of names, obviously, but because they also usually have a pretty great search function and they usually list the origin of the name and when it was popular and what the name means and some other names that it sounds like, etc. I'll link you guys to some websites that I frequently use below. The first thing you want to think about when deciding what to name your characters is what names would fit into the world of your book. In Harry Potter, you have a fantasy world that kind of takes place in contemporary-ish UK. So we have a lot of UK names like Harry, Ron, Hermione, Seamus, Neville, Fred, George, etc. If your book takes place in another country, then you're going to want to make sure that your names fit for that country. When creating a fantasy or a sci-fi world, you'll frequently want to either tweak existing names or create new ones, but even when you're doing that, you want to make sure that the names all sound like they fit together. So for example, in the Grisha series, which takes place in a fantasy world that's roughly based off of Russia, a lot of the names are Russian sounding. So for example, you have Alina, Mal, Nikolai, Tolya, Tamer, and Zoya. In Beyond the Red, which takes place on an alien planet in the future, I took some names that I liked, but I also made up names that sounded like them so they all fit together. So as the Sephiron would say it, we have Eros, Kora, Dima, Yarek, Serek, Roma, and Asha. Point is, you want the names to all sound cohesive and like they can fit together so that you don't end up with a weird outlier name that suddenly draws attention to itself. As for whether or not the meaning of the name actually matters, that's totally up to you. For me, when I'm borrowing names, I'll sometimes use a name because I think the meaning fits really well, but sometimes I'll just take the name because I like it and it fits. It's totally up to you. In the end, they tend to be just fun facts that they happen to fit anyway, so not a big deal either way. What I've been doing lately when I write books that I know are going to have a large cast of characters is when I'm creating names or looking for names, I'll create a long list with way more names than I actually need. That way, when you're in the middle of your draft and you're writing and suddenly a new character pops up that needs a name, you can pull the name from the list that you've already vetted. Final points. Whether or not you use punny names is up to you too. I tend to think that punny names really only work in books with a lot of humor, like Artemis Fowl type stuff. But whether or not you use it is up to you, just be careful. Sometimes if you name your bad guy like Evil McDarkness, people aren't going to take him seriously, so again, up to you to use at your own discretion. Finally, make sure your names are not too similar to each other. Part of this is making sure you don't have a bunch of names that all start with the same letter, and this includes major city titles or just proper nouns that you use. So for example, in the early drafts of Beyond the Red, I had way too many S names because I wasn't really thinking about combining the character names with like the world names. So for example, we have Safara, which is where the Sephiron live, so it's already two S's. So those are the kind of things that you want to be thinking about, mostly because it gets really confusing when you have too many names of the same letter. And you also usually don't want names that sound too similar, like Robbie, Bobby, and Dobby. Unless of course you're doing it on purpose, which is usually done with books that have a lot of humor. So again, use with your own discretion. So that's all I got for today. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and comment, and I'll see you guys next week.